Okay, recording on audition.
Michael, thank you, and everybody out there, welcome to the show. Today is April 2nd, 2014. I am your host, Carl Munger, the founder of Gallant Few, and I'm very proud to be an American veteran. Thank you for listening today, or watching today, if you're tuning in here through the YouTube broadcast. This program is dedicated to those who said, "Here am I, send me," and we honor our veterans. We celebrate those who have succeeded in their civilian careers, and we identify areas and resources that help veterans leverage their own military experience into successful and rewarding lives after the military. Today's show is brought to you by 2Vet Arms and Pacific Star Communications and is dedicated to the as yet unnamed ISAF soldier who died as a result of a non-battle related injury yesterday in Afghanistan. Read the press release this morning about the ISAF casualty, and the name will not be released until next of kin is notified. We pray that it is not an American, but you know, we're the majority of the soldiers that are over there, so good possibility. I also want to mention that we have a companion blog. The New American Veteran can also be found at gallantfew.blogspot.com. If you go to gallantfew.org, down at the bottom, you'll find a link that will take you to that blog. There is a notable blog post that went out today. Ranger Chris Bemis, who's a veteran of service in the 1st Ranger Battalion, he writes about 11 years ago today when they conducted the raid that rescued Private Jessica Lynch from the Iraqis. And, you know, there's been a lot of information about, was it real, was it not, what kind of raid was it? I'll tell you what, there's a video associated with it that shows the Rangers and other Special Operations Forces going in to bring her out. And she's laying there in that, they've got her, it's either a hospital bed or a bunk of some sort, and they're doing first aid to her. And you hear an automatic weapon open up outside the building, and she screams and recoils and shakes, and you can tell right then and there what kind of pressure she was under and what happened to her. And then Chris Bemis in the blog goes on to write about how he and other Rangers who did not come armed with shovels or any other kind of digging implements, when they were informed that there were dead American soldiers that were buried in the courtyard of that hospital, he and the other Rangers went in and with their hands, with their fingernails, they scratched down into that dirt until they found American soldiers. And the way that he describes it, the condition of the bodies, clearly tortured, clearly excruciating deaths. And, you know, I thank God that they went in, that they got her out, and that they recovered the bodies of those veterans. So you're probably wondering, who's this guy that's sitting here over my shoulder if you're watching on video? I want to welcome Adam Bird. He's the co-founder of Vets on Media. And, well, hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Take it everything is working, we're live and on the air, and nobody has texted me to say there's dead air time.
No, in fact, got a compliment says sounds good.
Awesome.
So we're doing something right.
Good, good, I like that. You know, I kind of wondered when Adam said he was coming into town for the Final Four tournament, I thought he was really here just to critique me and see how I did because of the broadcast last week, which actually I think went very well. No, I'm glad he's in town. I'll tell you, it is, as I said last week, it's an honor and a privilege that Gallant Few and Vets on Media have teamed up to produce this show because they do fantastic work. They have, we were discussing at lunchtime your plan to take over the world.
Yeah.
Yep. And we're glad to be a part of that.
In a good way, not like a Dr. Evil kind of way, but a good way.
A lot of times when I put out, it sounded totally wrong. A lot of times when I do a presentation on our veteran mentoring stuff, I put a slide up there at Dr. Evil and Mini-Me.
Nice.
So yeah, kind of. There's a theme that runs through everything that we do. That's pretty consistent here. No, I'm glad that you're here in town. And one of the things that we talked about, you have a dream to be able to expand across the country. But before we go there, because there are going to be some of my listeners that have heard about you, they've heard me talk about you, but they really don't know who you are, what you are. Where did you come from?
Well, it all started long ago. It was fall.
In a galaxy far, far away.
And, it was summer of '78. No, I originally grew up in Wisconsin. Live in Arizona now for the last 20 years, and I graduated high school in Arizona, and then I decided to join the military, join the National Guard, and did about 2 months shy of 9 years in the Guard with a tour in Iraq, which one of my closest friends in the world, James Fallbush, who's also the co-founder of Vets on Media, it all kind of started as just him and I doing a podcast off the kitchen table and some of the American Legions. And
so I remember when you guys interviewed me here like a year ago, I could hear beer glasses in the background.
Well, I mean, there's still a lot of that.
I think you were either at a bar or a coffee shop.
Yeah,
but
now we have a studio, and we still do a lot. There's still a lot of morning drinking going on, but it is what it is, and we make it fun and entertaining, and that's, I look at it, if we can, change somebody's life, even if they listen to the show for 5 minutes, and then you got somebody that's kind of down and out, and they're listening to us, and that 5 minutes could, might change their mind.
So man, if those two guys can go on the air.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's James has got the face for radio, so
I've been accused of that too.
But I mean, that's how it just kind of started from there. It started with a podcast called Vets Aren't with Adam and James. Mm-hmm. We did that for about 6 or 8 months, and people started approaching us, and we saw an opportunity, and that's how Vets on Media was born.
Now, what was there about your previous experience that led you into the broadcasting side?
I really didn't have any experience. I come from a business and education background. I got both my degrees are in business and with a minor in marketing. And
here in Texas, we say business.
Yeah, business. And I lost touch with James after we got back from Iraq for several years, and I got invited onto a radio show. I was doing education at the time for a for-profit university, and got invited to talk about education benefits through the VA. And I walk in, and I was like, man, the back of that guy's really ugly, and he looks familiar. And sure enough, he turned around. I was like, that's why I know him. I was like, it's James. Right?
I'm not even going to ask why you recognize the back of his head.
That's a whole other story in itself. Love story going wrong. But anyway, and we just kind of picked up where we left off, and I always kind of looked up to James, and James is such a character.
He is. Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's such an entertainer. And he really knows how to work a crowd, and he's just, I mean, you're around him for 5 minutes, and you can't help but to laugh, because he's always doing something funny. That's what I love about him, because I could be in a completely bad mood, and you listen to him for a couple minutes, and
lift you.
Yeah, and I can be mad at him, and he'll turn around, and you can't be mad at him for very long, because he'll do something, and just, whatever, But it kind of, that's how it started. James has more of the background. He started on a terrestrial station, and I got invited, and we kind of picked it up from there.
Terrestrial station.
Like your local, like if you're in your car and you turn on the radio.
AM, FM.
AM, FM dial. So, and that's where it stemmed, and I kind of, feed off of him.
So your original show then was local, contained in the Phoenix area, or did it go out?
When we started on the old station that we were on, it was a very small part of the Phoenix area, and I wouldn't even say I was really part of it, I kind of showed up and I kept getting invited. For some reason, I had some input.
Why does this guy keep coming back?
So I just kept coming back, and James and I had an idea. I think we could reach more people and do something more fun on what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we did, and we started it, and next thing you know, we started seeing that we were getting followers, and we were getting, quite a few emails from people we've never heard of before. And we're like, how'd you hear about us? Oh, listen to your guys' podcast. I'm like, all right, cool, we got fans. And it's been growing from there.
Can you give an example of somebody that's contacted you and said, hey, you guys really did make a difference to me?
Oh, wow.
Put you on the spot here. We didn't talk about this earlier.
Man, names, I can't, think of names.
Yeah, we don't want to say specific names.
No, I'm going to. More recently, there was a listener who is active duty Army up at Fort Lewis, and he's been listening to us for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And we started talking about one of the other shows that's on the network, and he started listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up getting he's moving to Arizona now, and he just recently bought a house with his wife, and it was all kind of started through us, and
nice.
We got to meet him. We had an event that we were at, and he came down and said, hey guys, I'm so-and-so, and we're like, oh, you follow us on Twitter, and that's how it was kind of cool that we're starting to see, when we do events and stuff like that, people that we haven't met before are approaching us and, hey, I listened to you guys' show. I guess I'm not really used to it yet. It's kind of funny, but it's because I don't really look at myself, and we don't really look at ourselves like that, but,
yeah, but you guys, you made it into a magazine here about a month ago.
Yeah, we did. We made it into a Veteranpreneur magazine.
And if I was really telling you right now, I'd pull that up and show it on the screen so everybody back there could see it. Now, I'm going to show a picture later when we do our second guest and we talk about her book. Then I'm going to bring up the picture of the book, but I wasn't prepared. What can I say? I'm still learning my way.
And like a good business partner and battle buddy, he's texting me right now. A sister of a girl's whose brother suffers from PTSD contacted us. It was either in Kentucky or Tennessee, one of the two. So we're all over the place.
Yeah.
It's getting to be pretty exciting.
One of the things that is a consistent theme of Gallant Few, and which is the organization that started the New American Veteran Talk Show, and I have seen across the board with veterans, is a tendency to become isolated.
Yeah.
So when you think about all of the veterans, and we were talking earlier about the veteran population in the U.S. is about 10, 11%, according to the census, about 10% veterans, 1% post 9/11 veterans. But when you think about parents, brothers, sisters, kids, that population probably goes up to 20 or 25% of the U.S. is either a veteran or intimately affected with or by a veteran.
Right.
And that is a huge part of the population. But when you go into an American Legion post or a VFW post or wherever, it's like the place is dying. There's crickets there. There's not one place in a community where, except the VA at the waiting line for prescriptions or whatever, but there's not one place that veterans tend to go congregate. So then you have they're just spread to the four winds all over the place. And you could live the way things are right now. And I had a friend of mine that walked me through historically how neighborhoods developed and how back in the day, 100 years ago, everybody helped each other raise their barns. And then before cars came around, so everybody would sit out on the front porch and they'd wave at people as they went by, and because you didn't have anything to watch on TV because you didn't have a TV. Right. So everything was very community oriented. You knew everybody else's business, you knew who they were, and then when cars started becoming popular, then people started building garages, and then instead of sitting out on your front porch, what happened? You'd pull into your garage and then you go into your house. Right. So the contact and community started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I'm oversimplifying this somewhat because with air conditioning and automatic garage door openers, the fact is that it changed fundamentally the way local communities interact. Right. So now you might not even know the person that lives across the street from you. You might have never seen. You could live in a house I've lived in this house now for almost a year, and I have met the people across the street because they walked over and introduced them. I've seen left and right, but there's a little cul-de-sac thing right across, and there's 4 or 5 other houses over there, and if they walked down my sidewalk, I wouldn't know that they lived across the street from me. Sure. So that's just one of the things of communities now, is that they're not connected even with your neighbors. But then when you think about veteran population coming back into a community, they're so isolated they don't know anybody else that's there. So one of the extremely valuable things about Vets on Media and about what Gallup Few does is it brings the population of veterans back together. So the more of you that listen and invite your friends to listen, the more we'll be able to talk about the themes that are important to you as a veteran, and then also we'll be able to encourage veterans to come together and do things on a local level that benefit other veterans. So I think one of the problems, and I can just talk and talk and talk and talk, so if you want to jump in, you just might have to put your hand out and kick me under the table or something. Yeah, because I'm usually not this chatty until you get a microphone in front of me, and now you add a camera to it, and now I'm off the charts. It's one of those things where I think the reason the American Legion posts, by and large, there are some that are very effective, and the VFW posts, by and large, are dying off because they're not of the community anymore.
Right.
There's someone that is in charge of it that decided this is what we're going to do, and other people are like, screw that, I don't want to be part of that, so they don't do it. And until communities start taking responsibility for themselves, veteran communities themselves, in Roanoke, Texas, this area here where I live, or in Oklahoma City, or wherever other veterans live, they need to come together and take responsibility for their communities and then help each other make that transition and assimilate. Assimilation is not the right term, but that transition back into the community. And veterans are natural leaders, and I would love to see more veterans take leadership positions in their communities.
No, I think it would be nice because as we talked over lunches, I think if that starts happening, you'll see a change. It's got to start within the communities, and as it starts within the communities, it branches off into a larger scale. And as, like I said earlier at lunch, you see kind of a down, I don't want to say a downfall, but for a lack of a better phrase, of this country kind of tearing in a downward motion the last 15, 20 years. It would be, getting veterans more involved, you would think that we'd be able to turn that around.
You would think, yeah.
But we don't know. So that's kind of how, that's one of the goals of Vets on Media, and everybody that's involved with that is, I want to start shifting that.
Well, the fact of the matter is, one veteran all by himself or herself stands up and says, hey, let's make something happen here. Everybody's going to be like, who is that? What are they doing? But if the veterans locally come together and support each other and get to know each other, now you can start to have a greater leadership impact on the community because you're affecting more and more people. You get one person that tries to be the squeaky wheel, and maybe they get a little bit of traction, but more than likely they're going to end up hoarse and disappointed. But the community, I always come back to the community. When we talk about a community that's got problems with unemployment, veteran homelessness, veteran suicide, then I look right back at the person from the community and say, what are you doing in your community to reverse that trend? How are you helping your community hire more veterans or identify more veterans or bring more veterans out of their isolation mode to be part of the community? Yeah. And until we as a population do that, nobody else is going to do it. I mean, nobody even cares that we're in Afghanistan. Right. So.
And that's just it. I think people are they want to believe everything they see on the news or read in the paper and not do any homework and see what they can do. They'll say, okay, that must be true, so we're just going to do this. And nothing ever changes. We're spinning our wheels. And I don't even want to say we're spinning our wheels. We're actually going backwards when we have the potential to move forward and make things better.
Right, yeah. And when you think about the shifting of responsibility, one of the things that you learn that you are very much evaluated on and encouraged by or rewarded by is taking responsibility. And one of the things that's so frustrating to me is when I look at our elected leadership on both sides of the aisle. I mean, there isn't anybody that's innocent in this whole thing. Nobody takes responsibility for what the debt is, for what all of the things that are causing the issues. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of finger pointing.
Yeah.
And I just wonder when enough is enough. When people are going to come to the realization that enough is enough. I can't be the only person, and I don't even like politics to be honest with you. And it
makes you feel like you need to go wash your hands when you say that.
Dirty now, it just It's sad because I see, again, we live in the greatest country in the world, and we're tearing downwards, and people are getting content with, oh, we'll just let the government do this, we'll let the government do that. It's not what this country was founded on.
Right.
It's not, if you're letting rules change and your rights being taken away, and you don't even know it half the time, because you're just too like, okay, whatever, it's not going to affect me. Well, it is affecting you. You wonder why people can't pay their bills, find a good job, this, that, or what gas prices go through. Because you're not paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, and then you get to the point where, and this is the last political thing, and then I want to ask you some other questions about vets on media, but you get to the point where there are people that say, why hasn't someone given me a job? And that's the problem. If you, and I know people are in extremely dire situations, and there are folks out there that are really hurting, that are very, very capable, and there are probably some veterans who are listening to this right now that fit that boat. But it's nobody else's responsibility to give you a job.
Right.
It's your responsibility to figure out how you fit into the grand scheme of things and then go make that happen. You just can't sit back and wait for it to happen.
You really can't.
I see too much. I see that one of the dangers that I think with the messaging that goes on right now about the companies like Walmart and their pledge to hire veterans is you create an expectation that Walmart's going to give all veterans a job.
Right.
So you, as a veteran, you're like, oh, heck, I'll just go over there because they're going to give me a job. It's like trick-or-treating, only you knock on the door of the company, they give you a job. And it doesn't work like that.
Right.
And I think that the more that entitlement sense goes into the veteran community on society giving things to them, the worse off it's going to be long run. So let's go back to Vets on Media. So can you talk a little bit? Don't share any classified information or anything like that.
Most of the stuff is G14 classified.
G14?
G14, that's pretty high.
I had a Special Operations Forces SEAL Ranger guy the other day that used that one on me too. No, I guess what I'm asking is, you want to expand across the country and have other radio shows, different places. If there's somebody that's listening in Toledo, Ohio, and they say, you know what, I'm really interested. I've been maybe doing a blog talk radio show or something, or writing a blog, but I'm really interested in connecting, finding out how I might be able to plug in and be a part of this network. Can you talk about how somebody would approach you and what the expectations are?
It's funny. I'll use one of the examples. One of the shows that we have on the network that will actually be live tonight, Tactical 16 with Silent J. That's a shameless plug for you. He kind of reached out to us, and he was doing another a show on a different online.
Keep talking. I'm just looking for anything else.
Online venue, and he said, "What do I need to do to get on your guys' network?" And I said, "Well, where are you?" He said, "Well, I'm in Pittsburgh." And I was like, "Well, here's what you would need." And, basically, if somebody's got an idea and they pitch James, if they pitch me or James a show, James and I will get together and we'll talk about it and say, hey, I think this would be a good idea for a show. If we give them a thumbs up, then, we'll help them get on the network, and they're just kind of go from there. And
it's a business. What you run is a business.
Yeah.
So it's something that needs to be sustaining. It needs to be something that pays the bills. Yeah. It's not something somebody can just say, hey, put me on the air, and then they're off and going, because the equipment's expensive. The whole setup is very professional.
It is a business. We're not a nonprofit. We are a for-profit company, and as both of us like to say, we like money. We want to make money. Right. We're in it to make some money, but at the same time, the money is nice, but the bigger picture is we want to change lives for the better, and get this country back to where.
Part of that is being able to hire veterans.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big thing. I look at it. That's a huge hurdle right now. Is my goal, my personal goal is I'd like to have around 40 stations around the country within the next 4 to 5 years. And here in Dallas, with your show, it's one. We got our one in Scottsdale.
We're the anchor.
Yeah, we have Pittsburgh, and then this fall we'll be putting one up in Virginia, just outside of DC. And we'll be celebrating our 2-year anniversary this month.
That's amazing.
To have 3 stations around the country in less than 2 years, I think that's.
Well, and you said earlier that yesterday was your 1-year anniversary for quitting your other job.
Well, yes.
That's a big step.
1-year anniversary where I took what I like to call the leap of faith, and been downhill ever since. It was. You know, I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't scary. It was scary as hell. And but I know I did the right thing. And you know, I'm just glad that I got a great business partner who just happens to be one of my best friends that is very supportive. And you know, he's right there, and we're kind of like a yin and a yang. We have the same goal. He's got a little bit of a different approach than I do, and I think that's the beauty of it, is because me personally, I don't want somebody that's got the same vision and then follows the same path, because if I fall, then they're going to fall, and you know, we're there to pick each other up.
Yeah, if you're carbon copies of each other, you don't need each other.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So, but you know, back to your questions, how do people get a show? You know, reach out to us first, and that's the starting point. And then we just kind of go from there and see, you know, what your idea is, pitch us your idea, and we'll tell you, you know, there are costs involved. It's brokerage programming, so there's a monthly fee, but it's a lot more cost efficient than if you were to go to your local radio station and try to do a show.
Oh yeah.
We've done our research. We've been doing it. You know, we're pretty much, you know, I like to think we're professionals at this now.
One of the nice things too about this is, you know, if you're on the air on a AM station, you really don't know who or how many people are listening. But
yeah,
I mean, they've got ways that they can try to measure that, but they don't know what station I'm on my car, or whether I'm even listening to a CD or something.
Right.
People still have CDs in their cars. My cars are old, so I still have
I
CD
got
players
you.
in them. Yeah, with the match, little book of matches stuck in there. But when you're talking about something that is broadcast through the internet, you can measure. You know how many people are listening. You have a pretty good idea who your audience is because of the content. So you can go to somebody that might be a business that wants to reach out into this population, and you can say, hey, we reach this many listeners in this population target segment. Would you like to participate, you know, or do some advertising?
I know James has got a huge smile on his face right now, because there's actually a software that we're in the process of, it's on our wish list to get, and we can measure it down to zip code on who's listening, how long they listen to, and et cetera. So, and that's actually one of the things that we're looking to purchase here very hopefully soon.
Is this one of the programs that the federal government is not using anymore, so they're trying to offload it for cheap?
It's one of those that it's like, okay, we'll let those guys have it. No, but it's a really good program, and you know, like James actually goes to school. He's a journalism major. He goes to ASU, the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism.
Nice.
And that's, you know, Walter Cronkite is a legend in journalism, and I could see James being, you know, I mean, Walter Cronkite, that's a big shoes to fill, but I could see James, you know, in 20, 30 years kind of being our generation of the Walter Cronkite.
James Cronkbush.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, pretty much.
Sponsors for the show. If somebody out there owns a business and they say, hey, I'd like to be able to connect, how do they?
Real simple. You can call. You can email us at info@vetsonmedia.com.
Info@vetsonmedia.com. Okay.
Info@vetsonmedia.com.
Good. And
you can call me at 623-640-3052. I almost gave my wrong number out there.
somebody would have been happy to get those phone calls. Okay, what I'm going to do right now, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to play this announcement that Boone has recorded for Gallant Few, and then we'll be back to call in our next guest.
Pull up your hand. Go to settings.
A warfighter will have committed suicide. This is a tragedy. We're losing the greatest of this generation every day at an alarming rate. Currently on active duty, a warfighter commits suicide 1 every 36 hours. But there are ways to help, and you should help. You should help right now by contacting gallantview.org and find out how you can contribute and help stop, even eliminate, the warfighter suicide rate. This is a tragedy, and you can help right now by contacting gallantview.org. Do it now. Make it happen. All the way.
That was my friend and veteran Boone Cutler, who has gone through a number of his own health issues. He and I were not able to connect over the last couple of days because I understand he was hospitalized. And for those of you, if you have not listened to Boone, he does a radio show that's called Tipping Point with Boone Cutler, and you can find archives of it online. I've had him on the New American Veteran Show a number of times. And he has a traumatic brain injury from service in Iraq. He also has post-traumatic stress disorder. Only drop the disorder part because it's really just post-traumatic stress. One of the things that I'm just going to talk about Boone really quickly because I think it's important for you to understand in a microcosm, in a specific example, some of the things that veterans have dealt with. Because Boone, 82nd Airborne veteran, jumping out of airplanes, he finds himself in Iraq in charge of a psychological operations, a PSYOPs team, and he's got, I don't know, 5 or 6 other guys that are part of his team. And they were there during the surge, 2006 timeframe, Sadr City, which was the, I don't know if you could even raise it to the level of the armpit of the Baghdad area. And his responsibility was to go into that population, find people that knew information or that could connect him with information. So he's doing networking on a international and geopolitical scale. And his job was to get them to provide information that the U.S. forces could use to either catch the bad guys or to help rebuild the infrastructure of their community. And he would talk to 10 people, and then the next day, half of those people would be found in different places of the city, in different pieces, in different places of the city. And so, but through all of that, the work that happened in Baghdad and in Iraq during the surge, it paid off. And I hate to see some of the things that are going on over there now, but as a direct result of him doing what our country asked him to do, he brought back with him the burden of feeling like he's responsible for perhaps hundreds, if not thousands, of Iraqis that were killed by terrorists or by other Iraqis because they didn't like the interaction with the Americans. And that's a hell of a thing to have to carry on your soul, on your heart. To compound that, when he got back, he's now being diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he's been open about it, so I'm not violating any HIPAA laws by saying this, but his struggle is one of extreme frustration in terms of the country understanding, recognizing, and taking care of the sacrifice that somebody like Boone has given. And then he also, though, he continues to outreach and help other people. One more quick example from Boone, and then I'm going to call up our guest. A year or two, I'm not exactly sure the time frame after Boone got back to the States, he found out that one of his teammates had committed suicide. Devastating thing. So he reached out and talked to another one of his teammates, and they're having a phone conversation, and he's saying, man, can you believe that our buddy killed himself? And they're talking about things that they remembered, and then Boone's kind of fishing for information, and he says, do you have that any of those post-traumatic stress kind of, and so he's beating around the bush trying to do a little bit of fishing here, and his buddy says, I haven't left my apartment in a year. Now, this is a team, a closely knit team of people that depended on each other, that lived 24 hours a day with each other, watching each other's back, and then they go back to the States, and one of them kills himself, and another one hasn't left his apartment for a year, and nobody else knows. That generated right then and there the Spartan Pledge. Boone and his buddy said, you know what, I'm going to make a promise with you that I'm not going to kill myself until I call you first. And then I'm also going to make it my mission to reach out and help other veterans. It's not saying I'm not going to kill myself, and I think there's an important distinction there that maybe some people don't like in the anti-suicide crowd. But the ability to end your own life is probably the ultimate choice that every one of us has that we can go to, and I pray to God that no one does, but it's there and you can't take that away. So you can't tell somebody, I'm not going to do it, but what you can say is, I'm not going to do it until I call you first. And then if it's somebody that you have bled with, that you have loved and watched their back like this team of men did, then you're not going to kill yourself until you reach out and call that other person. And guess what? As soon as you open that line of communication, you're not going to do it, because now you are reminded of how respected you are and how loved you are and how worthy you are. And it is each one of us, it's a burden, a charge that I place on everyone that is listening to this program to reach out to one of your battle buddies, your Ranger buddy in the Navy, Air Force, whatever you call that person, because somebody's always watching your back. take that Spartan pledge with them. Go to descendantsofsparta.com. You can watch a real brief video there where Boone talks about it, and believe me, you see him talking about it, you will get it. Then you need to reach out to your buddy, make them watch it, and then take that pledge together. One other thing that I don't want to forget to talk about before I bring the guest on, and that's First Saturdays, because First Saturday breakfasts have become a really popular item across the country. And right now we're managing on Facebook, and I'm looking at other ways where we can find something besides Facebook, because, you know, believe it or not, there are some veterans out there that don't want to be on Facebook, that wish they didn't have to be on Facebook. And First Saturdays really boils down to this. If you want to connect with other veterans in your community and you don't want to spend any money by joining an organization, paying dues, or having to do anything else that you lay cash out of pocket, then First Saturdays are the ideal thing to do. And what we ask veterans to do is about 9 o'clock, could be 10 o'clock, whatever you want to do locally. As long as somebody takes charge and publicizes it, doesn't matter. But first Saturday of each month, and this upcoming Saturday is the first Saturday, find a local spot. Go to First Saturday on Google, on Facebook. You'll find it very easily. Post the location of the restaurant, the time that you're going to be there, and who you are. And then just go. Get a cup of coffee, sit there and wait, and see who shows up. You might really be surprised at some of the other people that show up. One of the first ones that's really taken off is in Savannah, Georgia. And it originally started with a group of Rangers there that met for breakfast. And I was there about a year ago, and there were about a dozen of us around the table. Well, now another veteran has kind of taken charge of that. She, now I'm forgetting exactly her branch of service. I want to say it was Army, but it might have been Air Force. But at any rate, she's taken that over and done some social media work to get it out there. And now she's got about 24 people that show the first Saturday of each month, and it keeps growing. The important thing there is it's all community driven. Veterans from your community get together. You don't have to pay money. You don't have to make a reservation. Nobody has to even buy breakfast, because you can just get a glass of water if that makes you happy. That's what First Saturdays is all about. There's one here in Roanoke, Texas at Fuzzy's Taco Shop. If you are in the North Dallas area, join me at 9 o'clock this Saturday morning. Fuzzy's Taco Shop in Roanoke, which is, I think, local, is like 114 something. I don't know. Sometimes here in Dallas you have East, Southwest, and Northern Street all wrapped into one name, so it's kind of weird. All right, let me talk for a minute. I'm going to figure out how to make this phone call and get Julie.
What would you like me to say? First off, thank you for having me down here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very glad that you're here.
Love Dallas. It's actually my first time actually being around in the Dallas area. So it's I could
driving around. Ooh, buildings.
Yeah. I was like, where are the mountains?
You have those.
I was like, how do you tell which way you're going?
That's the problem.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for having Google Maps.
I think that's the only downfall I see is, like, you know, I'm comfortable in Phoenix as a valley. There's mountains everywhere. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, I can look at a mountain range. I know where I'm at. Can't do that here.
Nope. And
have to find a building.
The way that
if you
the
don't
ground
see the building,
you can't even see. Yeah, you can't even see downtown Dallas because of the warehouses and other things that when you're on the highway. So.
Yeah.
All right, here let's call Julie. See if we can get Julie Weber-Torres on the line. It says we're calling. Yeah, we have a ring.
Hey there, Paul.
Julie, hi, Carl Monger. You're live on the air.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it is a pleasure to have you on the line. I appreciate you making the time for us, and thank you for your father's service and for your family's sacrifice as a part of that service.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have on the radio. I'm going to shut it off.
All right. Yeah, please do.
I hear you call.
While you do that, while you turn that down, I'm going to tell our audience, Julie Weber-Torres is the proud daughter of Vietnam veteran Jerry Julius, he goes by Jerry Weber. Jerry completed 2 tours in Vietnam with the Army, 1968 to 70, as a light equipment engineer with the 557th Engineer Company. He volunteered to bravely serve his country at the young age of 17 and during the war conflict in Vietnam. So he wasn't drafted. He volunteered to go, which is extremely uncommon in the late 60s. Following the loss of her father, Jerry, on October 8, 2005, Julie was inspired to research her dad's Vietnam experience and try to understand his life and the struggles with post-traumatic stress and alcoholism that he had. And after a couple of years of researching, she put together the pieces of his life and created a genuine and unique story and it's a book titled A Daughter's Hero. I got a chance to read through part of that this morning. I haven't read the whole thing, but I'll tell you, it's very well written, Julie. It's easy to read.
I appreciate it.
You know, so us Rangers, we need lots of pictures, and but even without lots of pictures, I still enjoyed going through part of the book. And so, tell me, why did you decide to write the book?
Well, after losing my dad, of course, there's a grieving process, and you want everyone to remember your dad. And I wanted the country and everyone to know about his sacrifice and his struggle trying to transition back from his service and help others dealing with similar issues.
You know, what you wrote about in the book, he did not talk about what he had been through with you or other family members. You really didn't know other than he was in the Army.
That's right. I was able to piece different pieces together throughout the years and get little tidbits, and then I was able to kind of pull in his experience. I was able to connect with some of his buddies, which was a pleasure, and learn a lot about their day-to-day operations when they were there. And they shared with me that he was a good soldier. He made everybody laugh, and that was really, touching for me to hear. And I got a picture of what he did there.
You know, you talk in the book about he had a lot of photographs, and that at one point you found them kind of strewn around on the floor of the attic, but you didn't know before. You didn't know that he had all the photographs. And did he go and review? Did he go through the photographs a lot? Do you think that was something that he dwelt on quite a bit?
Well, actually, when I was the gory photos that I found in our attic was when I was a small child.
When you say gory photos, you mean
away.
battlefield death and destruction photos?
Yes, close-up images of death. And
that's a hard thing for a little girl to see.
Oh, absolutely. So I think that kind of embedded in my head. I knew that my dad was a soldier, and I knew that he had a war experience at a young age. That started
the spark in you to want to research later and figure out what's going on.
That's right, yeah. And then my grandmother kept all of his photographs over the years, and my aunt, since my grandmother passed, had kept them, and when she sent them to me, that kind of also helped put the pieces of the puzzle together, because he actually wrote on the back, where he was and what the guys were doing. So it was helpful for me in my search.
What did you learn? What was the most, maybe not necessarily shocking, but the most surprising thing as you did your research that you learned about your father?
Well, I think the most surprising thing is, as you know, he kept it a secret, pretty much his experience, but I was able to find out that he knew that he was suffering from PTSD. It was something that he did not tell his children. Now, after the book, I find out that my uncle was aware, one of his brothers, but his children did not know that he even knew that he had it, or even that he sought help for it.
So at that time, he knew that he had post-traumatic stress?
Yes.
And
he actually went for help in 1988, and they said he had a personality disorder.
Well,
10 years later.
This was the VA that diagnosed him?
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
The disorder word again, they like to throw that in.
Still having issues, and then they put him through treatment for PTSD.
And were you able, in your writings, did you find anything about, did he feel the treatment, was it effective at all, or did he even share any of that in his writings or in his notes?
Well, in the notes, in understanding what he went through, I do know that there was a period where he had minimized or stopped the binge drinking, but soon he got a letter that he was denied for PTSD. He didn't have enough evidence to support his claim.
One of the themes throughout your book, you talk about post-traumatic stress a lot, and how I think how it affected him and how it ultimately affected your family, because you really didn't get to spend a lot of time with your father, did you?
No, I didn't. No. and there was some distance between us due to my mom. She got remarried also, so we kind of moved away out of state. So,
you know, I identify with you on this to a certain extent because my parents divorced when I was very young. I was 4, and my father was a sergeant in the Army at that time, and ultimately 20 years later retired as a sergeant major. But so I grew up not knowing my father at all. Never saw him from the age of 4 until I was 19 years old. I'd never seen him, and I learned years later, and this affected him terribly as well. And so, but it's a multi-generational thing. His father, my grandfather on my father's side, was a 3-war veteran. He earned his combat infantryman's badge in World War II. He also fought in Korea, and he also fought in Vietnam. And he's buried in a national veterans cemetery or federal cemetery in Denver, Colorado. And he was a sergeant first class. And well, I won't go through all of the ins and outs of it, but when he passed away, he was alone. He was living in a kind of a shelter thing like a YMCA. All of his possessions, when my blood father went to recover his possessions, it all fit in one shoebox. And he died there alone, and he was an alcoholic. And
so you can identify.
Yeah, no, I identify exactly. And because of that, I ended up having an absolutely fantastic relationship with my mom's father, with my grandfather on the mom's side, and with my stepdad. But I've always felt that I was cheated out of that special relationship that a son gets with his father because he wasn't there. And my point there is, I'm not blaming anybody, but the post-traumatic stress can flow through generations of families and affect many, many downstream folks. So, and I think you are an example of that too, because the separation from your father and how he passed away. What do you bring? Yeah. What do you bring away from that somebody that's out there that is listening to this right now? Maybe it's a child of a veteran who has post-traumatic stress or has an alcohol problem, or maybe it's a veteran that is struggling with alcohol and post-traumatic stress now. What kinds of things would you want to pass along to them?
I would definitely, what's been beneficial for me, I know it's after the fact, but I've been able to get involved with some veterans organizations here locally, and they've been really supportive. You know, I've been out volunteering and giving back. And
it's okay to say who they are if you want. I love to talk about organizations that do good things.
Yeah. But I think that's been really healing for me. I think if my dad was still here, the one last thing that I think that I missed that I wish I could go back and do, I would have tried to get with a veterans organization to help them, you know, because I think that they understand each other the best, and that could have been one more avenue for me, you know, because it's been healing for me as a daughter.
I'm trying to pull up a picture of your book right now because I'm trying to screen share it here, and it's just not wanting to cooperate. So I will, and I already did, I think, put a link to this broadcast on Gallant Few's blog. But when I circle around and I put the link here so that everybody can listen to it, I will include on there a photograph of the cover of your book.
Well, I certainly appreciate you, you know, and I appreciate your service and your continued service to our veterans.
It's my privilege to be able to. It's totally out of selfish reasons because I love hanging out with veterans. So this gives me an excuse to do that.
That's right.
What are you? I got two more quick questions for you. One is, what kind of feedback are you getting when folks out there get a copy of your book and read it? What are they saying, or are you getting feedback?
Well, I've only gotten positive feedback so far, and that's been really encouraging for me, you know, to keep sharing my story. It's been a healing process, you know. The feedback's been really thoughtful. I actually have got an email from a social worker in South Florida that works for the VA, and he said that he actually used parts of my book in PTSD sessions.
Nice.
So that right there is such rewarding, you know. I don't even know how to explain it.
Okay, so how does somebody How then does somebody get your book? Where do they go?
Just on Amazon.com right now. I'm working with some other vendors, but right now it's available on Amazon or the Amazon Kindle where they can download it.
So it's both in electronic version and print version?
Correct. Uh-huh.
Super. And you know what?
Yep.
I think I just figured out how to share. Let me see here. If people can see that. Maybe can you give me some feedback there? I think we got the picture of it up right now on the Google Hangout. So that is the book, A Daughter's Hero, written by Julie K. Weber-Torres, tribute to a veteran of Vietnam. Julie, thank you so much for being on the show today, and I'm going to enjoy reading the rest of your book, and thank you for sharing your message, because it is extremely important for people that are going through things to share with others what they're going through, particularly on the military side. And we'll jump up on my soapbox here real quick, and I'll talk about this because it's painful for you, having gone through everything that you've gone through, to then want to share that because you're like, this is kind of a family secret. This stuff is within our family. Other people aren't going through this thing. But I think you realized, as you did your research and other people you've talked to, that it is not just you, it's other people too. And by sharing that story, it makes it takes, when you hear all the talk about take the D out of PTSD, because it's not a disorder, it's a natural reaction to an unnatural situation. So it's normal what people go through. And by holding it in because you think something's wrong with you, then that's when it makes the problems that much worse. And by you sharing some light and sharing your story, you're helping people, and thank you for doing that.
And I thank you for recognizing PTSD as well, or PTS.
Great. Well, thank you, Julie. Appreciate you being on the show.
And thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Let me jump back over here to my script. What have I not covered that we should talk about today?
Hey, I'm just along for the ride. This is your show.
I appreciate that. You know, I've helped a couple of veterans over the last couple of days, and one of them posted something on one of the Facebook pages that Gallant Few was Carl's baby. And as soon as I saw that, I went on and I wrote, it's not mine, it's ours. It's ours as a community. This is our show as a community.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression for why I do what I do. Number one, I'm very, very blessed in that I have a wonderful wife who gives me all the rope to hang myself.
Yeah.
She has a career that pays the bills for this family, and without that, I would not be sitting here behind this microphone. I'd be out somewhere miserably working in a cubicle or
if I may.
Absolutely.
I would say for all the listeners out there, you know, I've had the privilege now to know you for about 2 years, or going on 2 years, and one of the most humble individuals I've ever met, and it's speaking on behalf of Vets on Media. We are just absolutely ecstatic to have you a part of the family.
Appreciate that.
On here, I think what you're doing with Gallant Few is just speaks volumes of your character, and you know, we all have that goal. We want to help more, and there needs to be more, and tooting our own horns here, but this is for all of us. There needs to be more people like us out there.
You're right. You're exactly right. Yep.
So.
And hey, I'll take all the volunteer help I get. So seriously, we have some folks that are coming on board the Gallant Few team, and we're working through the details of exactly how that's going to work. But I have Heidi and Philip Kitts, who are an absolute phenomenal couple. Sergeant First Class Kitts as a private watched a jet fly into the Pentagon when he was working as a private at the Old Guard in Arlington National Cemetery. And he has recently been putting together an online social support group for veterans of the Old Guard.
Wow.
And, you know, you would think the Old Guard, man, they're in Washington, D.C., they wear blues all the time, and, you know, it might be kind of stressful walking in front of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, but come on, you know what? Well, the fact of the matter is, and in his case, as a private, you think about the aftermath of 9/11, and people don't really sit down and think through the experiences that people have had to go through. But Philip and the other soldiers in his company got put on detail at the Pentagon to do body recovery from the ashes and wreckage of the Pentagon in the parking lot. So, when you think about it's kind of like being on police call, only you're looking for remains, and you want to identify people, and there are very few things that would be more horrible than that.
Right.
And that was his introduction into being a soldier. And so he has now taken the lead in putting that networking group together for them, which is leading into some other areas of gallant few and populations that we want to help. But he went from private to E7 in 8 years. And that's a fast burning career. And he did not do anything, that qualifies as special. Didn't go jump school, didn't go Ranger school, didn't serve in a Ranger battalion. Just a good old 11 Bravo, straight leg infantryman. I mean, the kind of solid people that we win wars because of people like that. And he was very good at being a leader and putting himself out front. And as a platoon sergeant, he was hit with an IED, and that IED caused traumatic brain injury. I mean, severe brain injury. And Philip, like any good soldier will do, he didn't tell anybody else about it because he didn't want to have to leave his position of responsibility. There's the book it's on one of my shelves over here. I can't remember the title of it right now, but a lieutenant talks about being a platoon leader in Afghanistan and having mortar rounds come in around him, and he had such a concussion to his head that he's got brain fluid leaking out of his ear. But he doesn't leave the field because he wants to continue, even though he has a splitting migraine for like 8 months. He stays with his platoon. Now, this guy's jacked for the rest of his life because he didn't immediately go get care.
Right.
They would have evacuated him out immediately and taken him away. But he felt it was his responsibility to stay there and lead those soldiers and help keep them safe. And Philip did the same kind of thing. What the result was a re-injury and things that got worse. And then, and a theme that I am seeing throughout, by the time that you say, something's wrong with me, I got a problem, the leadership doesn't say, wow, you got hurt, thanks for all of your dedication and service and all that you did, let you get taken care of now. They're like, man, what a dirtbag. What did you just get so stupid off? So what in the heck? And everything turns around, and then resources do not get provided. And and Philip's and Heidi's story is kind of an example of every bad thing that possibly could happen to get all pulled together. Through all of this, though, Philip has decided to step out and put himself out as an example. And he doesn't do it because this helps Philip Kitts. And he'll be the first one. I took him 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that we're able to do because of the generosity of people and people supporting in events like Run Ranger Run, I was able to take Philip and Heidi Kitts out to D.C. for a traumatic brain injury awareness day on Capitol Hill. And I put them in front of the senator from Kansas that sits on the VA Appropriations Committee, and he was able to tell the senator about his experiences and some of the good things and some of the bad things that have happened to him. And now we have people in that office that are taking a close look at how we can maybe make some policy changes or get some things done, hopefully, that will help down the road. And I could do a whole show, and maybe I will do a whole show at some point on how all of that came about. But Philip stood there, sat there, because he's in a wheelchair because his brain injury has his balance all whacked. So he's sitting in a wheelchair, and I mean, what a trooper. He never let anybody know that he was uncomfortable the entire time. And pushing, he's a big guy, and I got to push him uphill. Like everywhere we went, it was uphill in that wheelchair, and the wind's blowing like in our face, 85 miles an hour. But he told Senator Moran, and he told other people there, he said, this is not about Philip Kitts. He said, I got a wife. She is very dedicated to helping me. He said, but what about that private that gets a traumatic brain injury? And he's told, shut up, you're a private, stand at attention, go stand in the corner over there at parade rest for 2 hours because I don't like the way that you're acting.
Right.
That kind of crap happens out there right now because there are leaders that are not trained in traumatic brain injury identification and appropriate care, and they also are not trained in post-traumatic stress. And then there's that underlying culture of macho, whatever you want to call it, that says, I'm not going to show a sign of weakness no matter how much it hurts me.
Right.
I'm not going to let anybody else know that
ego gets in the way. And
ego, pride, manliness, whatever it is. And it takes a lot more bravery and guts to be a Philip Kitts and to say, this is the hell that I am going through, not for me, but because I want to make sure that somebody else doesn't have to go through the same thing in the future. So my hat's off to Philip. And And so the other piece, and the reason that I brought them up is because they have joined Gallant Few, and they are helping me with the benefit of their experience in the medical board process and medical retirement process and all of the benefits. Heidi Kitts is a statistician by trade. She worked in Washington, D.C. when her husband, I mean, they were pre-9/11 privates. And he actually had already been in a civilian career and decided he wanted to serve. So he was older when he went in. Nice. And carried a level of maturity, which is probably why he got promoted so quick. But his wife Heidi has done a lot of work in D.C. learning the ins and outs of the systems, family support, caregiver support, and those things. So they are helping me deal with over the last week, I've had about 200 veterans that have logged into the Gallant Few website and said, help me, I'm transitioning. And that's a lot of folks to be able to handle. So I'm glad that I've got some help in doing that. And there are some other things that are going on that we'll talk about later. But now the show is coming to a close. It's a quick hour.
It goes by
very quick hour.
Yeah.
And I want to reiterate, we talked about earlier about the reach of Vets on Media. And if you want to get connected with Vets on Media, if you want to maybe find somebody locally in your town that wants to help support the broadcast so that we can get the word out to more and more veterans, get a hold of me. I'll get you connected with Adam, and we can work, whether it's a sponsorship for one of the shows or whether it's identifying a potential station or a show in your area there. I think Adam is very interested in looking at that. I'm certainly interested in anybody out there that wants to come on this show. If you are a veteran who has transitioned, and all of us, you know, the thing about every active duty person out there, you're all going to become a vet. If you survive your military service, you are going to become a veteran. So every one of you has an interest in what we have learned and what we can help you with. So if you are a veteran that's transitioned and you want to share your experience with somebody who hasn't yet, contact me. Come on the show. We'll talk about your transition. How did you go from being an artillery maggot to being an attorney at the most prestigious law firm in Kansas City, for instance? So we want to know, how'd you make that transition? Because guess what? There's another artillery guy or gal out there right now who has thought, man, if only I was smarter or had more resources, maybe I'd be an attorney someday. Well, if you've done it, you can help lay the path, show the azimuth, the path on the map for them to follow so that they can achieve the same kinds of things that you have. And that, in a bottom line, is what Gallant Few is all about, is veterans helping out other veterans. It's from the community, by the community, and for the community. Every show I end and I play taps. And I do that for a couple of reasons. It is an absolute gorgeous piece. It has tremendous historical significance. And it is, it certainly is a sad tune. And when I hear it, I immediately think of the soldier funerals that I've gone to where I've heard that played, and I think of the flags that are given to the families, and it gives you just a moment to reflect and to remember. And I would ask at each time that you listen to this show, you stick through taps at the end so that you can pay respect and reflect on those that have gone before. It's my privilege to host the New American Veteran, and it's a super special privilege to be part of Vets on Media now. Thank you for listening today.